Thank you, Ambassador Friedman. Thank you so much for being with us here in Jerusalem on top of the spectacular Aish roof. It's amazing to have you here for this conversation. We're celebrating all the amazing work we do around the world, and especially in New York. We're celebrating the Gala with Bill and Elizabeth Kahana, really amazing supporters of Aish Torah, and they're very excited to have you here, as are all of us.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Burg. It's great to be here. Mazel tov to the Kahanas and to all your supporters. What you do here is incredible. It's not just that you have the best real estate in the world, but the message that you impart to the Jewish people, especially to the millennial community, is incredibly important and is a key ingredient in the growth of the Jewish community. So congratulations.
Thank you. I had one major question that really kept popping in my head as we were going to sit down. You know, you moved the embassy to Jerusalem, established Israeli sovereignty in the Golan Heights, the Abraham Accords. When do you sleep?
Oh, there's time to sleep, and but there's a lot more to do. You know the phrase "malin b'kodesh." You know, we have to keep elevating, and I don't think a day goes by when we don't think how we can make the relationship stronger between Israel and the United States. And if we're honored to have more time, we'll just keep at it.
If we could talk a moment about the moving of the embassy, I think that is what struck people. First of all, how quickly it happened. You know, you got here and about a year later it happened. And also, it had been promised by so many administrations, Republican and Democrat alike. What changed that enabled you to be able to pull that off?
Well, you know, there's this guy named President Trump who became the president in January of 2017. And that's what changed. That was what changed. We had a president who was committed to keeping a promise. Now, you can look at this in two different perspectives, one of which is, should the embassy move to Jerusalem because that's the right thing to do? And the answer, of course, is yes. And that was sort of the first analytical bucket, if you will, that we pursued. The United States has every right to determine where to place its embassy. Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel for as long as there's been Israel, for as long, frankly, as there's been recorded history, and it was obvious that the embassy of the United States belonged in Israel. There's a second point, though, which is how should the Trump administration be perceived as a global force going forward? The president made a promise during his campaign. What were the consequences of keeping that promise? What were the consequences of not? Well, keeping the promise, the president sends a message. He says, we're going to stand with our allies, we're going to keep our promises, we're going to be trusted, and we're not going to shy away from threats from our enemies. That's the message of moving the embassy. The message of not moving the embassy is, I'm embracing conventional wisdom, I'm stuck in an old narrative, and I'm afraid of rogue nations. Now, that's how important that decision was. When he made the right decision, it wasn't just a cause for celebration for you and me and others that have always, every day gotten up and said, it's not just for the religious or for those who see Jerusalem as a holy city. It's for anyone, religious or not, Jewish or not, who wants to see America lead the world. And that's what I think was every bit as important as the more narrow perception.
What was the pressure like? I mean, I remember at the time there were so many doomsday sayers that if you do this and you move it, the Middle East will explode. What was that pressure? I can only imagine. What was that pressure like on you, on the president, everyone involved?
Well, there's a lot of pressure, and it wasn't just from the outside. We had pressure from the inside, from very high-ranking people within the government. It's no secret that it was opposed by the then Secretary of State Tillerson. It was opposed by the then Secretary of Defense Mattis. It took a lot of courage for the president to move forward. Now we looked at every scenario. We assessed all the risks that could go forward from Morocco all the way to Pakistan, across the entire region. Reality was we didn't see it. We just didn't see it because at the end of the day, most of that noise is noise. That's what it is. It's people, spouting traditional rhetoric. But was there anything behind it? We didn't think so. And look, thank God we were proven right.
And then on to the Golan Heights. Was there a checklist? I mean, it was really amazing. We were just watching the incredible things happen.
I'd be lying to you if I tell you I didn't have a list. I still have a list. I'm not going to tell you what's on the list, but certainly those things are high up on the list.
And when the cameras stop, and we can talk.
Look, the Golan Heights was was a different set of issues. The president hadn't promised. That wasn't the subject of a law. The Jerusalem Embassy Act obviously enshrined our views into law. That law was around since 1995. But the Golan Heights was a different message, which is that we're committed to Israel's security. Israel cannot be secure without maintaining the high ground of the Golan Heights. And there's been absolutely nothing that's been done by Bashar Assad or by his father, Hafez al-Assad, to suggest that the Syrians will ever mitigate their malign behavior to the point where Israel could even consider conceding the Golan Heights. And so again, I think it's a politics based upon realism. And again, I think the president got that one right.
And it seems like it culminated with the Abraham Accords, where there was the sense that we need to keep this momentum moving. Great things are going to happen, with a lot of naysayers saying no, 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 and then all of a sudden, 2 Arab nations. I mean, it was unprecedented, historic. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what into that, kind of like the inside baseball for the Aish folks?
Well, look, it's interesting because all our predecessors said that you can't make peace with the Arabs until you make peace with the Palestinians. It's famous tape that people have seen of John Kerry saying in 2016 that is absolutely impossible, cannot be done, that Israel can make peace with the Gulf states without making peace with the Palestinians. We knew that was wrong. We knew that was wrong back in 2017. And I think the first point I want to make about that is there was a direct link between moving the embassy in 2017 and making peace with the Gulf. Now you may say, how do those two things connect? It's what I said earlier. The president got up and said, we're going to keep our promises. We can be trusted. We're going to support our allies, and we're not going to shrink away from our enemies. Now, that applies to the Emirates as well. The Emirates say, look, we want to have that relationship of trust with the United States. We're an ally of the United States. That's a relationship that we aspire to. And so I think that, that gave life to the political will within the Emirates and Bahrain, and by the way, it's elsewhere as well, to normalize with Israel. I'll tell you something about that, which I think really has moved me. The 15th of September, we had the ceremony on the south lawn of the White House. I came back to Israel the next day.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, were you there?
Yes.
Oh, great. I'm sorry. It was a big crowd. I didn't know. I'm glad you were there. That's great.
Ari and I have a selfie together.
That's great. That's great. So next day, I fly back with the Prime Minister, land Erev Rosh Hashanah, and I'm in bidud, right? I'm in isolation. So Rosh Hashanah, I'm at home, and I open up a machzor, and of course, what are we reading about in the Torah that day? We're reading about the rivalry between Yitzchak and Ishmael, right? Yitzchak, from whom the Jewish people descend, Ishmael, from whom the Arab nation descends, and of course, it's not in that portion of the Torah reading, but we know that when Abraham passed away, Yitzchak and Ishmael reconciled, right? They buried their father together in Marat HaMachpelah, and it just seemed to me how appropriate that we were studying in the book of Bereshit about the reconciliation of the first reconciliation between a Jewish nation and an Arab nation, and of course, Ishmael became the name of some very famous rabbis, including the rabbi that we say his name every single day before we start davening, Rabbi Yishmael Omer, right? So no reason whatsoever why the children of Ishmael and the children of Yitzchak can't reconcile. And look, 3,500 years later, and we're doing it all over again. It's really profoundly moving to me.
It's moving. I had chills just having you mention that. Just going to the Palestinians, which you mentioned parenthetically, and this different approach where, kind of going to other countries that no one thought could be. Do you see, having spent the last couple of years dealing with these issues, do you see a path forward for peace? Do you think that there's a way that we can reconcile here in this country?
I think there is. I think it's really about new leadership within the Palestinian people. I think the existing leadership is just dug in on an old and failed narrative. It's dug in on a corrupt enterprise, which has for years had a business plan of making their people as miserable as possible to garner sympathy, ultimately to garner aid, much of which went into the wrong pockets. That plan just is not going to continue to work. And I think that the Palestinian people are starting to recognize that there is a world out there, a world that is just like Israel and the Emirates, or Israel and and Bahrain, or elsewhere. And it's the world to which they should aspire. It's a world of opportunity. It's a world of peace. It's a world of coexistence. Look, I think the Middle East is changing for the better. I think Israel and its neighbors are going to become more prosperous, more peaceful, more secure. But look at the Palestinian people. You know, their GDP per capita is, $3,000-$4,000. In Israel, it's $43,000 to $44,000. It's 10 times. Same is true of Jordan. The Palestinians have to get onto the right side of history, and they're smart enough, and they're now exposed to enough of what's going on in the world to make those choices. It's going to take some time, but the pathway of paying terrorists, building statues to terrorists, corruption, not respecting human rights, not respecting religious freedom, it's just a pathway to nowhere. And until they get off that path, and that's why I'm the most proud of those aspects of our plan, because you can agree or disagree about the geography of the plan or some of the details, but everyone who reads that plan, especially the Palestinian people, should say, thank God the United States is looking to build Palestinian autonomy in a world where they respect human rights, where they respect freedom, where they don't pull people out in the middle of the night because they criticize the government and never heard from again. We did that for the Palestinian people, and it's the right template for the future. And I think people are starting to realize that. And I can tell you, we have lots and lots of conversations all around the region. There's a lot of momentum moving in the right direction. We just have to keep it going.
So you see a few more countries coming on board in a similar way.
Oh yeah, you'll see lots more. And even the body language. Look, who would have thought? Who would have thought that you could just fly from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi, flying over Saudi Arabian airspace? Unthinkable a year ago.
Right.
Unthinkable. Now it's a free pass.
Right.
It turned a 7-hour flight into a 3-hour flight.
Right.
We're just getting started.
And what of the biggest existential threat that I think everyone recognizes Iran, in terms of, what do you see coming down the pike in terms of, there's these allies coming together in order to kind of fight that their evil ways?
Look, Iran is the greatest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. It's a very dangerous place. We have made them far less dangerous. They're still dangerous, but we've made them far less dangerous by breaking their economy. They don't have the money anymore to be as adventurous as they used to be. They're pulling back to some extent in Syria, to some extent in Lebanon. Hezbollah is on the ropes again because they're losing that cash flow. We're on the right path to defeating not the people of Iran, but the Iranian regime. Now, to have in the Straits of Hormuz, right across from Iran, an ally like the Emirates, aligned with Israel, aligned with the United States, that just increases the pressure on Iran. So look, we have a lot more wood to chop on this, and Iran, I said, is still a very dangerous place. But we're on the right track. If we take our foot off the gas, if that pressure is somehow lifted, I'm afraid.
One of the things we have is we have a lot of folks that do business with China. And just wondering, just in terms of being the ambassador here and being in Israel, where they do a lot of trade with China, versus America trying to come to terms with their trade with China, does that occupy your time, or how does that come to play here as well?
It does. Look, the United States has a very advanced system of laws which protects foreign investment, protects America from potentially hostile foreign investment. Those laws are not as advanced or as mature in Israel. We've encouraged Israel to get that way. We think China is a dangerous place. We think China is a dangerous regime. Just because they're not shooting rockets doesn't mean that they're any less threatening in the future. And they're very, very skilled with regard to their plan to economically gain more and more power. I think Israel needs to be careful. I think they are getting more and more careful. One of the side benefits of the deal with the Emirates, right, is we've now created a second significant source of capital from the outside, foreign investment into Israel, which is far less threatening and far less malign. And I think as we continue to open up this region, I think Israel will continue to find greater sources of capital, and again, much less dangerous sources of capital.
Here we are at the Kotel. You're the first U.S. ambassador to come to the Kotel with the Prime Minister. You're the first ambassador to come on Jerusalem reunification day. I mean, what were your feelings, first of all, just being there on an emotional level, personal level, but also, were there people telling you, again, that was early on, just, you shouldn't be there, and, which is almost strange for Jews to be told not to go to the Kotel, but...
Well, look, I got here on, I think, May 15th. A few days later, 2 or 3 days later, the president arrived. And we set the tone there because the president was the first sitting president to visit the Kotel.
Right.
And, from there, it was easy. So, sure, I brought Secretary Pompeo, I brought, Secretary Mnuchin, Vice President Pence. They've all been here, and they've been here with the Prime Minister. You couldn't go to Ir David, City of David, before I got here. We go there now all the time.
Right.
It's a shame to come to Jerusalem and not visit the City of David because there's so much history there. So we've broken all those barriers. We did it for the right reasons, and I think that practice, I think, will continue. Look, so many world leaders were far too tentative in how they treated Jerusalem and how they treated Israel's right to Jerusalem. A lot of them now are rethinking that because of what we did. A lot. I mean, I think you're going to find in relatively short order more and more countries moving their embassies to Jerusalem because they see it's the right thing to do. They see the world didn't explode. And most important, when they come to Jerusalem, they see for the first time in 2,000 years, maybe first time forever, Jews, Christians, Muslims all having free, open access, living together, being able to pray. Okay. Never before in history, only under Israeli sovereignty has Jerusalem been an open city. Jerusalem means city of peace. It's been anything but a city of peace until 1967. And I think all you have to do is come here. You can see right here, look out the window. I mean, look at where we are. Look at this beautiful vista. And it's quiet.
Yes.
It's so quiet. You can hear a pin drop here.
Yeah.
Again, I think this is one of the things we got right. We're very proud of it. And we're going to keep moving mala mala, as they say.
You and I share something in common. We're both the son of pulpit rabbis. And as a matter of fact, someone recently, Aish, mentioned they had grown up in your dad's shul. Mm-hmm. Coming from a home where your dad was a rabbi of a synagogue, and someone who's embraced their Judaism their whole life, what are your thoughts and emotions coming here to Israel on behalf of the United States, taking, your Jewish values? What's guided you through this journey?
Well, my father was the greatest influence on my life. He was a selfless rabbi, lived for his community and for his family. My greatest disappointment in life is not having him around to watch me work. But his memory lives with me every day. I get up every morning and think, what would he do? I know how excited he would be. He loved Israel. He brought me here for my bar mitzvah in 1971, right down there at the Kotel. And my father and mother instilled in me a great love of Israel. Look, Israel's one of those places where, if you're an American lucky enough to work on this file, like almost everything else I've done professionally, it starts in the head. What's the right thing to do? How do we protect American interests? How do we advance the relationship? But very quickly, it moves from the head down to the heart. If you're in this city and your heart's not speaking to you, you're doing something wrong. And so it's always a combination of intellect and emotions that kind of combines to drive me forward. I'm not shy about admitting that there's a certain level of emotional power that exists within the city.
I have no doubt that he's looking down and very, very proud of you and everything you've accomplished.
Thank you.
You've been to Israel so many times over the years, like you said, at the start of your bar mitzvah. Are you seeing it through a different lens now, being here as an ambassador versus when you were here as a tourist or as a...
Well, sure. Look, I love hot dogs, right? But if I saw somebody make a hot dog, I'm not sure I would like them anymore.
Agreed.
When I was a tourist, I was eating the hot dogs.
Right.
Now I'm watching the hot dogs get made. It's a little bit of a different experience. But you know what? You have to understand that government, politics, it's deeply personal. People have strong, personal feelings. There's lots of egos. There's lots of agendas. That's just the nature of the beast. And so you have to sort of keep an even keel. I think that if we move forward, and again, back to the analogy of intellect versus emotions, if we always maintain, in this space, a love of America and a love of Israel, if we're deeply patriotic, in my case, look, I'm an American, deeply patriotic about America, believe strongly it's the greatest experiment in the history of human governance, and at the same time, we feel that there's something deeply special about the relationship of Israel and the United States.
Sure.
All of our Judeo-Christian values that made America great, they came here. They came right from this place right here. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Devar Hashem Yerushalayim. All those values came from where we're sitting right now. And if you understand that and you inculcate that in yourself, you get to the right result. All the other stuff is noise. I mean, it gets to the right place, and you have to sort of not get too caught up in it. Let the water boil, let the steam escape, and ultimately, if your heart's in the right place, you get to the right place.
Right. And your family, in terms of them, how has this affected them in terms of just the move and you being so busy, but also even just seeing, I know for Mike, when you get attacked in the press, sometimes it's more difficult on the family than it is on us because we just move forward. How's your family?
They've been great. My wife is fiercely loyal. She does not react well when people
she's a good wife.
She's more than a good wife, and she's fiercely loyal to me. I don't take it as seriously at all. I take it with a grain of salt. My kids some of them laugh about it, some of them don't. But look, I think that every one of my kids, they're all over 18. My youngest is 18. Then, we have 4 more between 27 and 35. Thank God we've got grandchildren. We got more coming, God willing. And I feel that they're proud. They're proud to be part of this. They're all incredibly interested in the subject matter. They love being, in the mix of all the meetings and the events, and they've gotten to know some pretty cool people quite well. It's been an incredible experience for our entire family. Irreplaceable.
Beautiful. Here at Aish Torah, so we've had, thank God, a beautiful relationship the last few years, and we hosted Vice President Pence here. We hosted Secretary Mnuchin here. We actually had right here where we're sitting the day after, if you remember, they moved the Jerusalem embassy. We had the White House Faith Council right here on the roof for a beautiful lunch.
Yeah.
In terms of Aish Global, how do you see our role or appreciation of our role or things we could be doing more, especially to all of our partners who are here who work so hard for Aish Torah around the world?
I sort of think you and I, to a certain extent, are in the same business. You're an ambassador, maybe with a small A instead of a capital A, but you're an ambassador. That's what you do. You take the beauty and the wisdom of our Torah, our sacred texts, and you bring them, you make them available to people all around the world who I think are so thirsty for that knowledge and that meaning and purpose in life. Life without meaning, life without purpose is an empty life, no matter how much money you make. And you, I think, fill that need in a very special way. It's not just because you got the best real estate in the world. It's that helps. It's a tool, but it's because of the messaging, and it's because of how you bring Torah study to so many people in such an effective way. People who are well versed, people who are just getting started, and I think it serves an incredible purpose. So I should be thanking you as well. You do an incredible ambassadorial job, for the benefit of the Jewish people and for the benefit of America and the state of Israel.
Thank you so much. And we spoke earlier just about so many millennials out there who are unaware of their Jewish story, and that's a really big role that Aish Torah plays. We try to kind of get out the Judaic story to them. And how important do you think that is for a young Jew, really to know their heritage and appreciate it, and to appreciate Israel as an extension of their Judaism?
I don't think there's anything more important. I've been somewhat critical about the level of Jewish education worldwide. Even my father was in his day. He used to say that it was a mile wide and an inch deep. And it's a problem that we've had for years, but it's and to some extent it's getting better. But I think the work you do is critical because people need to know what it means to be Jewish. It's not about eating gefilte fish, having bagels and lox. It's not about, just being a good person. It's important to be a good person, but there's a lot more to it than that. The Jewish people, we're given a legacy that's 3,500 years old, We don't want to be the ones to drop the ball. You know, our ancestors, generation after generation after generation, under the most difficult of conditions, managed to maintain this legacy. Now, you know, we're not under threat like we used to be. And so it's easy to assimilate, it's easy to, there's a lot of interesting things out there to read, a lot of great movies out there, a lot of great culture. And I'm not suggesting that we should eschew any of that, but we got to know who we are. We got to know who we are, and I think you're doing an excellent job of bringing that message back to life.
Thank you, and I want to thank you. Just, I mean, so many of us, you know, you talk about the noise, and there's, you know, sometimes, especially when in public positions, we hear all the noise and the negativity. But you know, I just want you to know that there are so many people cheering you on. To have someone leave their law practice and just kind of put it aside to go serve the United States of America, to help bridge the gap with Israel, to accomplish things that there are so many of us, when we told the folks back in New York that we were going to be spending time with you, that we were going to be hosting you and speaking with you, there was really, we were blown away by how much pride there is of you as a New Yorker, as a Jew, as a person that cares about the United States of America. And you know, as you said before, it was very meaningful what you said about your dad, and no doubt that, you know, that he's looking down on you, and so proud, as we all are incredibly proud of the path you've taken, and really your role model, really to myself and to the supporters of Aish Torah, the partners, and to all the millennials, all the young people I talked about. And so I just want to thank you for doing that. You know, in these jobs we don't get thanks as much as we need to be, so thank you so much.
You're very kind, and what you do is equally important. It has a profound effect on the future of the Jewish people, and you should just keep doing what you're doing. Be strong, be healthy, and continue to grow.
Thank you so much. Thank you.